The battlefield was covered in smoke and broken metal. Daniel, a human soldier, could hear the distant echo of heavy cannons shaking the ground. His breathing was heavy, his uniform torn, and his arm burned from a fresh wound. Still, he pushed forward, dragging his body across the dirt. He knew he was far from his squad, maybe the last one still alive. The war between humans and the alien race known as the Valari had gone on for years. Both sides believed they were defending their worlds. Daniel never wanted war, but he was a soldier. He had learned to follow orders, to survive, and to protect whoever stood beside him. As he stumbled over a pile of ruins, his eyes caught something unusual. A small sound, like a frightened whimper, rose from beneath twisted metal beams. Daniel stopped, his body tense, unsure if it was a trap. Slowly, he leaned closer. What he saw made his heart stop. It was a child, an alien child. The child's skin shimmered faintly with silver patterns, like glowing lines beneath the surface. Large, wide eyes filled with fear looked up at him. The child was trapped under a fallen steel frame, too heavy for its small body to push away. Every time the ground shook from another blast, the child flinched and cried softly. Daniel froze for a moment. He knew what he was supposed to do. This was the child of the enemy. His commanders would have told him to leave it. But when he saw the tears on the child's face, he could not move away. His human instinct, something deeper than orders or fear, spoke louder. Protect the child. Ignoring the pain in his arm, Daniel dropped his rifle and rushed forward. He grabbed the beam, straining his muscles, pushing with everything he had. His wound tore open more, and blood ran down his sleeve, but he did not stop. The child stared at him in shock, unsure why a human would try to save it. With one last desperate push, Daniel moved the beam just enough. The child pulled itself free, but before it could escape, the whine of incoming fire cut through the air. A plasma blast screamed toward them. Without thinking, Daniel threw himself over the child, pressing it down against the dirt. The explosion hit nearby, throwing dust and fire into the air. Shards of burning metal tore across his back. The pain was sharp, but he gritted his teeth. His body became the shield. For several seconds, he lay there covering the child. His mind screamed at him to move, to survive. But his heart refused to let go. He would not let this child be harmed. The battlefield quieted for a brief moment, the gunfire distant again. Daniel coughed, his chest tight, but he stayed over the child. Slowly, he lifted his head to make sure it was safe. That was when he saw her. Through the smoke, a tall figure approached. She was armored in dark silver plates, her presence commanding. Her eyes glowed faintly, sharp and filled with fire. In her hand she carried a long staff weapon, elegant yet deadly. The child's wide eyes lit up with recognition. It called out, weakly, "Mother." Daniel's stomach twisted. This was no ordinary soldier. This was one of the Valari leaders, the child's mother. She stopped in front of them, her weapon raised, ready to strike. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Daniel tightened his jaw, refusing to move, still keeping his body over the child. He thought this would be his end. He had saved the child, but now he would pay for it. But then something unexpected happened. The alien mother lowered her weapon slightly, her gaze fixed on Daniel. She had expected to see a human enemy harming her child. Instead, she found him suffering wounds, bleeding, and still protecting the little one with his broken body. Her heart, hardened by war, faltered. Daniel's vision blurred, but he held his ground. He whispered in a broken voice, "Stay down. Stay safe." He didn't even know if the child understood his words, but he said them anyway. The mother knelt slowly, her sharp eyes never leaving Daniel. She touched her child gently, checking for wounds, then looked back at the human. For the first time, in her long life of battle, she hesitated. Why would an enemy, one who had every reason to hate her people, suffer to shield her child? The child clung to Daniel's torn uniform, refusing to let go, even when its mother tried to lift it. Mother's breath caught. She felt something stir inside her chest, something she had buried long ago. Behind her, other Valari warriors appeared. They stopped in confusion when they saw the scene. Their leader, her child safe, and a human lying broken but alive. They expected her to finish him. They waited for the order. Instead, she raised her hand. Do not touch him. The warriors exchanged shocked glances but obeyed. Daniel blinked, barely staying conscious. He expected death, but instead he was surrounded by silence. His body was weak, every muscle screaming, yet a strange calm filled his heart. The child was alive. That was enough. The mother finally spoke, her voice low and strong. Human, why would you do this? Daniel gave a faint smile, though blood stained his lips. Because no child should die. Her eyes widened. The simplicity of his words struck deeper than any weapon. She had fought humans for years, seeing them only as destroyers. But here, before her, was one who would sacrifice everything for a child not even his own. She rose, her voice carrying the weight of command. Take him. Heal his wounds. He will not die here. The warriors hesitated again, stunned by her order, but they obeyed. They lifted Daniel carefully, though still with suspicion, and carried him back toward the alien camp. The child, still, clinging to his uniform, walked beside him. As Daniel drifted into unconsciousness, the last thing he saw was the mother's face. Strong, proud, yet softened with something unfamiliar. Respect. He had expected to die on this battlefield. Instead, he had saved a life and changed his own fate. Daniel woke to the sound of unfamiliar voices. His body felt heavy, and every breath came with a dull ache in his chest. When he tried to move, sharp pain spread across his back. Slowly, his vision cleared. He was no longer lying on a battlefield, but on a soft surface covered in woven fabric. Above him, the roof was made of strange crystal-like material that glowed faintly, giving the room a calm, silver light. He realized he was inside some kind of alien structure. His wounds were wrapped, with clean bandages, though they were not human-made. Strange herbs gave off a strong scent, cooling his injuries. Daniel blinked, trying to piece together what had happened. Then he remembered the child. His body tensed, and he turned his head. A small figure sat near the corner of the room, silver patterns across its skin glowing faintly. The alien child looked back at him with wide eyes, clutching a small crystal toy. When it saw Daniel awake, its expression brightened. It jumped to its feet and rushed to his side. The child pressed its small hands against his arm gently, as if making sure he was still real. Its voice was soft but full of emotion. Daniel couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. The child was relieved. He gave a tired smile. You're safe. That's what matters. Before he could say more, the door to the room opened. A tall figure stepped in, her presence commanding even without words. It was the child's mother, the warrior he had seen on the battlefield. Her armor was gone, replaced by robes of deep indigo, embroidered with silver threads. Without her weapon, she seemed less like a figure of fear and more like a leader of people. Still, her eyes held strength, sharp and watchful. The child ran to her instantly, wrapping its arms around her leg. She placed her hand on its head gently before turning her gaze to Daniel. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Daniel felt her eyes study him, as if she were trying to read every hidden thought in his mind. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady. You live. Daniel shifted, grimacing from the pain. Seems like it. She moved closer, her steps smooth and graceful. My people wanted you executed. They saw only an enemy, but I saw something else. Her gaze softened slightly as she looked at the child clinging to her. You chose to suffer for one who is not your kind. That is not the action of a monster. Daniel tried to sit up, but his body protested. He leaned back against the cushions instead. War makes people forget. Children are innocent. Doesn't matter if they're human or Valari. They deserve to live. Her eyes lingered on him, and for the first time he noticed a flicker of doubt in her expression. Doubt about the war itself. She introduced herself. I am Leora, matron of the Valari Guard. This is my child, Kalen. Daniel nodded, slightly. Daniel, just a soldier. Nothing more. Nothing more, she repeated, her tone almost questioning. You have done what many warriors of my kind would not. The conversation ended as more Valari entered the room. Healers carried bowls of glowing liquid and fresh bandages. They worked around him, their movements careful but wary. Their eyes betrayed suspicion as if they could not understand why their matron had spared him. Daniel remained quiet, watching. He felt like a stranger surrounded by enemies, yet he noticed something unusual. Each time Kalen moved closer to him, the healers relaxed just a little. It was as if the child's trust gave them reason to doubt their hatred. Hours passed. Daniel drifted in and out of sleep, his body demanding rest. Each time he opened his eyes, Kalen was there. Sometimes playing with the crystal toy, sometimes simply sitting beside him. By the second day, Daniel was strong enough to stand with help. The healers guided him outside, into the alien settlement. The sight left him speechless. Tall towers carved from crystal and stone rose high into the air, glowing with natural light. Bridges connected the structures and streams of water flowed between them. The Valari people moved with graceful steps, their robes shining with faint colors. Yet despite the beauty, Daniel felt their eyes on him, cold, suspicious, and sometimes openly hostile. Children stared at him with curiosity, while warriors reached for their weapons when he passed. He realized quickly that without Leora's protection he would not survive here. As they walked through the settlement, Kalen skipped happily at his side, refusing to let go of his arm. Leora followed behind, her presence like a shield. At the central square, a crowd had gathered. Valari leaders argued loudly, their voices sharp. Daniel couldn't understand their words, but he knew the debate was about him. He stood silently, while Kalen squeezed his hand, refusing to leave him. Finally, Leora raised her voice. The crowd silenced instantly. Her words carried authority, echoing across the square. When she finished, all eyes turned to Daniel. The mood shifted. Some still looked at him with anger, but others seemed conflicted. Leora turned toward him. They will not harm you, for now. But know this, your life hangs by a thread. You walk a line between enemy and something more. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand. That night he sat outside the dwelling they had given him. The alien sky stretched above, painted with stars brighter than any he had seen on Earth. Kalen sat beside him, pointing at constellations, speaking in a soft language Daniel couldn't follow. Still, he listened, nodding as if he understood. Leora appeared again, her robe flowing in the night breeze. She studied him quietly before speaking. You do not act like a soldier, Daniel chuckled faintly. I've seen enough war to know it destroys more than it protects. Her eyes narrowed, curious. And yet you fought. You bled. I fought because I had to. But I shielded Kalen because I wanted to. Her gaze softened at his words. For a moment her proud posture lowered and Daniel saw the heart of a mother rather than a warrior. She sat near him, watching her child's laughter fill the night. For the first time, Leora allowed herself to wonder, if a human could risk everything for her child, then perhaps the walls between their peoples were not as strong as she once believed. And for Daniel, lying wounded under a sky not his own, a strange truth began to form in his heart. He was no longer just surviving. He was becoming part of something greater. Days passed and Daniel slowly regained strength. His wounds still ached, but the alien healers had skills beyond anything he had seen in human camps. Strange herbs, glowing crystals, and chants of energy sped up his recovery. Yet even as his body healed, his mind remained restless. He was in the middle of an alien settlement surrounded by people who looked at him with suspicion and anger. Every step he took, he could feel their eyes follow him. To them, he was still an enemy soldier. If not for Leora's command, he would not be alive. But there was one who did not see him as an outsider, Kaylin. The child followed him everywhere. Whether Daniel was practicing slow steps in the courtyard or sitting under the glowing crystal trees, Kaylin was always at his side. The little one laughed freely, asking him questions in the Valari tongue, though Daniel barely understood. Still, the child never gave up. Slowly, Daniel began to learn simple words, pointing at objects, repeating sounds, making Kaylin giggle at his clumsy accent. "Fire," Kaylin said one evening, pointing to a small flame in a lantern. "Fire," Daniel repeated, his voice rough. The child clapped in delight. Moments like that warmed his heart. It reminded him of younger days back home, teaching his niece to speak. He had lost much to the war, but somehow this alien child had opened a door inside him he thought was long closed. Leora often watched from a distance. At first, her gaze was sharp, as though she were still testing him. But over time, her eyes softened. She saw how Kaylin clung to Daniel, how laughter returned to her child's face in a way it hadn't since the war began. One afternoon, Leora approached Daniel. As he rested beneath a tall crystal arch, she studied him carefully before speaking. "My people whisper," she said. "They wonder why I allow you to walk among us. Some call it weakness." Daniel met her eyes calmly. "If it is weakness to care for a child, then maybe strength isn't what we think it is." Her lips curved in the smallest hint of a smile. "You speak boldly for someone who should fear every breath here. I've faced death more times than I can count," Daniel replied. "Fear doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what you do with the time you have." Leora tilted her head, intrigued. She had led warriors into countless battles, but rarely had she heard such words from a soldier. That night, she invited him to sit with her near the central fire of the settlement. Valari traditions were strong, and the fire circle was sacred. Warriors, elders, and families gathered to share stories. For Daniel to be allowed, there was an unspoken test. The Valari told tales of their ancestors, their victories, and their struggles. Daniel listened quietly, though he could not understand every word. Still, the passion in their voices was clear. When one elder finished a story, silence fell and eyes turned to him. A younger warrior sneered. "What story can a human tell? Perhaps how many of us he has slain?" The crowd muttered, some nodding. Daniel remained calm. He took a slow breath. "I have no tale of victory, only loss. On the battlefield I lost friends, brothers, people I swore to protect. I carry their memory every day." His voice grew softer. "But I will tell you this. When I saw Kaylin trapped, I did not see an enemy. I saw a child who deserved to live. That is my story." The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Some looked away, ashamed, while others studied him with new eyes. The sneering warrior had no reply. Leora's gaze lingered on him. She felt something shift inside her, a truth she could not ignore. In the days that followed, she began to spend more time with him. She showed him Valari customs, their ways of honor, their bond to family. Daniel listened, asked questions, and respected their traditions. Slowly, he stopped feeling like a prisoner and more like a guest. One morning, as dawn painted the sky, in silver and blue, Daniel walked with Kaylin near the river that ran through the settlement. The water shimmered with glowing fish. Kaylin splashed his hands in the current, laughing. Leora joined them quietly. She stood beside Daniel, her eyes on the horizon. "Kaylin has not laughed like this since his father died," she said softly. Daniel glanced at her. "I'm sorry. War takes too much from everyone." She nodded, her expression distant. "My mate was a proud warrior. He fell in battle months ago. Kaylin has carried that pain. Yet with you, he forgets his sorrow, even for a little while." Her voice trembled slightly, though she quickly steadied it. Daniel said nothing, but his silence was heavy with understanding. Kaylin ran to them, grabbing Daniel's hand in one and Leora's in the other. The child pulled them closer together, smiling brightly as if seeing no difference between them. Daniel felt a strange warmth at the gesture. Leora, too, was taken aback, her heart beating faster than she expected. Later that evening, Daniel walked alone through the settlement. Some warriors still watched him with distrust, but fewer eyes burned with hate. Some even nodded slightly, a small acknowledgement of respect. He had begun to earn something he thought impossible, acceptance, but not all agreed. That night, a group of young warriors blocked his path. Their leader, tall and fierce, spoke harshly. Though Daniel could not understand every word, the meaning was clear. They despised him. The leader shoved him, testing his reaction. Daniel did not fight back. Instead, he straightened his posture and met the warrior's eyes. "I am not here to harm your people," he said firmly. "If you cannot see that, then nothing I do will matter." Before the warriors could respond, Leora arrived. Her presence silenced them instantly. She stood beside Daniel, her expression cold as steel. "Enough," she commanded. "He walks under my protection. Any who challenge him challenge me." The young warriors bowed reluctantly and left. When they were gone, Daniel looked at her. "You didn't have to do that." "I did," she replied. Her eyes softened. "Because you are no longer just a human to me. You are Kaylin's protector, and that makes you something more." Daniel's heart beat faster at her words. He realized then that his bond with Kaylin had tied him to Leora as well. It was no longer about survival. It was about trust, family, and something that felt dangerously close to belonging. As the stars lit the sky that night, Daniel sat with Kaylin and Leora by the fire. The child leaned against him, half asleep, while Leora's gaze lingered on him longer than before. Neither spoke of it aloud, but the truth was clear. The bond between them was no longer one of chance. It was becoming destiny. The days of calm could not last forever. Though Daniel had begun to win respect from some of the Valari, others remained firm in their distrust. Whispers grew in the halls of the settlement, carried by young warriors and hardened elders who could not accept that a human walked freely among them. One evening, Leora called Daniel to her chamber. The crystal walls glowed with silver light, and Kaylin slept peacefully in a nearby alcove. Leora's expression was serious, her voice steady but heavy with concern. "A challenge has been raised," she said. Daniel frowned. "A challenge?" He nodded. "A rival leader, Varrock, claims my judgment is clouded. He says allowing you to live has dishonored our people. He calls me unfit to lead if I cannot destroy an enemy." Daniel could see the weight of her words pressing on her shoulders. "What does this mean?" "It means there will be a trial," Leora said. "A contest of strength and honor. If I fail, Varrock gains power. He could take my command, and Kaylin's future would be in his hands." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He had seen Varrock from a distance, a towering warrior with scars across his chest and eyes that burned with hatred. Varrock had looked at him like prey. "And what happens to me if Varrock wins?" Daniel asked quietly. Leora met his gaze. "You will not live to see another dawn." Silence filled the room. Daniel leaned back, his mind racing. He had never sought power, never wanted to be part of alien politics. Yet here he was, his life bound to the fate of a people not his own. Finally, he said, "Then I'll fight beside you." Her eyes widened slightly. "You are wounded still, you cannot—" "I can," he interrupted, his tone firm. "I may not match Varrock's strength, but I know what it means to stand for someone. I won't let you face this trial alone." For a long moment, Leora studied him. Her stern expression softened just enough to reveal something beneath. Gratitude. The next day, the entire settlement gathered in the central arena, a vast circle carved from stone and lit by crystal torches. Valari warriors filled the stands, their chants echoing like thunder. Daniel stood at Leora's side, his body still aching but his spirit unshaken. Varrock stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow across the sand. His voice boomed. "This Human is a weakness. Leora's heart blinds her. Today, honor will decide her fate. Leora stood tall, her eyes fierce. My heart does not blind me, Varrock. It shows me truth. A warrior is judged not by the enemy he kills, but by the lives he protects. The crowd stirred, some shouting in agreement, others in anger. The trial began. Varrock charged with the force of a beast, swinging his weapon with deadly precision. Leora met him head-on, her staff clashing against his blade in sparks of light. The sound of their battle shook the arena. Daniel watched, his fists clenched, knowing this fight was more than just strength. It was the soul of a people being tested. But Varrock was powerful, each strike heavier than the last. Slowly, he pushed Leora back, forcing her toward the edge of the circle. Daniel's heart raced. He could not just stand by. He grabbed a discarded shield from the arena floor and rushed forward, placing himself between Varrock's blade and Leora's wounded side. The blow crashed against the shield, sending shock through his arms, but he stood firm. The crowd gasped. Varrock snarled. "You dare interfere?" Daniel's voice was steady. "I don't fight for myself, I fight for her child." He pushed forward, shield raised, striking back with all the strength he had left. The battle turned into a storm of clashing steel and roaring voices. Varrock fought with rage, but Daniel fought with purpose. Every strike he took, he thought of Kalen's smile. Every time he staggered, he thought of Leora's strength. Leora recovered her stance, moving beside Daniel. For the first time, human and Valari fought as one. Their weapons moved in rhythm, covering each other's weakness, striking with shared determination. The crowd, once divided, fell into stunned silence. They had never seen such a sight, a human shielding their matron, standing with her as though bound by ancient vow. Finally, Varrock made one desperate charge. His blade arced toward Kalen, who had run into the edge of the arena, crying out for his mother. Without hesitation, Daniel threw himself in the way. The blade struck his side and pain ripped through him, but he did not fall. He planted his feet, shield raised, and held the line. Leora roared, her staff glowing with power, and struck Varrock with a force that shattered his weapon and sent him crashing to the ground. The arena went silent. Varrock lay defeated. Daniel, barely standing, leaned on his shield, blood staining his tunic but his eyes unbroken. Leora raised her staff high. "This trial is ended. Varrock has fallen. Honor is not in hatred, it is in protection, and this human has shown more honor than many of our own." The crowd erupted, some with cheers, some with stunned silence. Slowly, even the doubters lowered their heads, accepting what they had witnessed. Kalen rushed into the arena, wrapping small arms around Daniel's waist. The child's tears soaked his uniform, but the smile that followed was brighter than any sun. Daniel winced from the pain but placed a gentle hand on Kalen's shoulder. "I told you, I'd keep you safe." Leora stood beside them, her eyes softening as she looked at Daniel. For all her years as a leader, as a warrior, she had never seen courage like his. That night, the settlement lit their fires high in celebration. Songs of victory filled the air, though for Daniel, the night passed in a blur of exhaustion and pain. Yet in his heart, he felt something new, a belonging he had never known. He was no longer just a human soldier stranded in enemy land. He was Kalen's protector, Leora's ally, and perhaps something even more. The fires burned bright in the Valari settlement that night. Songs rose into the air, deep voices carrying pride and victory. The people celebrated not only the defeat of Varrock but also the honor shown in the arena. For the first time, Daniel felt the crowd's gaze was not filled with hate. Some warriors even bowed their heads as he passed, a silent acknowledgement of his courage. Daniel sat near the edge of the fire circle, his body aching from wounds, but his spirit steady. Kalen sat pressed against his side, small fingers gripping his sleeve tightly. The child's eyes shone with happiness, as if the danger of the trial had never existed. Across the fire, Leora sat tall, her indigo robe shimmering in the glow. Her eyes were fixed on Daniel. There was pride in her gaze, but also something deeper, something she had kept hidden until now. As the songs ended and silence fell, the elders of the Valari rose. One of them, his hair silver and his skin marked with long glowing lines, spoke loudly so all could hear. Tonight we have witnessed something no Valari believed possible. An outsider, a human, stood beside our matron and fought with honor. He shielded her child as though it were his own. Such actions cannot be ignored. The question before us now is simple. What place shall this human hold among us? The crowd murmured, voices mixing between agreement and doubt. Some shouted that Daniel should be honored. Others warned he was still a human, still dangerous. Leora stood. Her presence silenced them instantly. She walked into the center of the fire circle, her robe flowing like water, her staff in her hand. She lifted her chin, her voice strong. "I have seen this man with my own eyes," she said. "On the battlefield, when all reason told him to walk away, he shielded my child with his own broken body. In our halls, when scorn and hatred surrounded him, he did not strike back with anger. And in the arena, when Varrock threatened our honor, he stood beside me. Tell me, my people, is this not the way of true strength?" The crowd answered with a mix of shouts. Many cheered while some remained silent, unwilling to let go of their prejudice. Daniel shifted uneasily, not used to being the center of attention. He wanted no crown, no honor, no place of power. All he wanted was for Kaelin to be safe, and for the war to end. Leora turned toward him. Her eyes held his, steady and unshaken. "Daniel of Earth," she said, "you are no longer only a soldier. You are Kaelin's protector, and in protecting him you have become part of me. By the law of the Valari I claim you, not as enemy, not as prisoner, but as family." Gasps spread through the crowd. Family was sacred among the Valari, a bond stronger than blood or oath. For a matron to claim an outsider was unheard of. Daniel froze, his breath caught in his chest. He saw Kaelin's face light up with joy, the child tugging at his sleeve. "Father," Kaelin whispered, the word broken but clear in human tongue. The sound pierced Daniel's heart. He had never expected to be called that. He had lost so much in the war, yet here, in the unlikeliest of places, he had gained something he never thought he would have again. A child's trust, a family's bond. Some warriors shouted in protest. "He is not one of us. He cannot be. Family." But Leora's voice rose higher, silencing them. "Then let me ask you, who among you would bleed for my child as he has? Who among you would take a blade meant for me? If honor is our law, then this human has shown more honor than many of our kind." The crowd fell silent. Slowly, one by one, heads bowed. Even those who still held anger could not deny what they had seen with their own eyes. Daniel swallowed, hard. He stepped forward, standing beside Leora. His voice was quiet, but every word carried truth. "I never asked for this war. I never asked to be here. But I cannot deny what happened. Kaelin is like my own. And you?" He hesitated, meeting Leora's eyes. "You have given me a place when I had none. If you claim me, then I will stand by you." Leora's expression softened, pride and warmth shining through her usual strength. She placed her hand on his shoulder, a gesture both intimate and public. "Then let it be known," she declared. "From this night forward, Daniel is of the Valari. He is bound to me and to Kaelin by the law of claim. Any who would harm him, harm us all." The crowd erupted, not all in agreement, but none brave enough to challenge her. The decision was made. Kaelin jumped into Daniel's arms, laughing with pure joy. Daniel held the child close, his heart trembling with emotions he could not fully name. He had come to this world as a soldier, ready to fight and die. Now he stood as part of a family, claimed by an alien mother whose strength matched her compassion. That night, when the fires dimmed and the people returned to their homes, Daniel sat outside with Leora and Kaelin. The stars above glowed brighter than ever. Leora's voice broke the silence. "Do you regret it?" Standing with me? Daniel shook his head slowly. No. For the first time in years, I don't feel lost. She looked at him, her eyes soft in the starlight. Then perhaps this war has given us something worth keeping. Daniel met her gaze, and though no words followed, the bond between them was clear. He had suffered, yes. He had bled. But in that suffering, he had found something greater than victory. He had found family, love, and a place to belong. And from that night on, he was no longer just a soldier. He was Leora's, chosen, Kalen's protector, and a man whose courage had bridged two worlds.